How do you feel, Stephen?
I go to elevator base.
Get the slides up.
Try.
Slides. We need the slides right now. He's waiting for the Nasta pressure.
Nasta pressure.
Oh.
Nasta pressure.
Okay. Nasta praya sabadrishu.
Nasta Prayashavandishu. Nindam Bhagavata Sevaya.
By regular attendance of classes on the Bhagavatam and by regular service to the pure devotee, all that struggles in the heart is almost completely destroyed. A loving service under the personality of God, which grace of the souls. We're starting with a new chapter today. So before we read the verses, let's just have a quick recap on what we did yesterday. It's nice to know where we are and to maintain the flow of the general conversation that Krishna's having with Guru. Yesterday, Krishna was basically explaining the process of yoga, which includes, maybe we should ask all of you, what was part of the process? Yes.
You got to learn how to sit and breathe.
Yes, breathing, pranayama. But even before that, you have to come to a certain level of attachment, right? No association with the opposite sex or with anyone who's interested in the opposite sex. And then, yes, you go on to different breathing techniques, sitting postures, and trying to control the life of your routine. That's what was described yesterday. In today's class, in the verses we'll be reading, you'll see that Krishna is now explaining results, some of the results that come from this practice. Okay, so let's dive into those verses starting with number 1, text 1. And then from Jonathan's side, you guys can just
Go to the, are you going to do the Sanskrit for this? No, let's go to the translation. Go back.
Yeah.
Go back. Make it a little bigger.
Control pulse.
Oh,
There we go. I got you. Okay, Jonathan, get away with text 1, and we're going all the way on to 17, right?
Good.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Uddhava, the mystic perfections of yoga are acquired by a yogi who has conquered his senses, studied his mind, conquered the breathing process, and fixed his mind on me."
Sri Buddha said, "My dear Lord Achyuta, by what process can mystic perfection be achieved, and what is the nature of perfection? How many mystic perfections are there? Please explain these things to me. Indeed, you are the source of all mystic perfection."
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "The masters of the yoga system have declared that there are 18 types of mystic perfection and meditation, which 8 are primary, having the shelter in me, and 10 are secondary, appearing through material mode of goodness."
Among the 8 primary mystic perfections, the 3 by which one transforms one's own body are anima, becoming smaller than the smallest, mahima, becoming greater than the greatest, and laghima, becoming lighter than the lightest. Through the perfection of prapti, one acquires whatever one desires, and through siddhi, one experiences any enjoyable object, either in this world or the next. Through Ishita Siddhi, one can manipulate the subpotent through the potency Siddhi, one is impacted by the modes of nature. One who has acquired Yidhi Siddhi can obtain anything from anywhere to the highest possible limit. My dear gentle Uddhava, 8 mystic perfections are considered to be naturally existing and unexcelled within this world.
And secondary mystic perfections arising from the modes of nature, the power of supremely self-controlled first, and other bodies that exist, barely expanding things that way, moving the body at the speed of the mind, assuming any form one desires, entering the bodies of others, dying when one desires, witnessing the pastimes between everything to called upsides, completely executing this determination, giving orders to his
Power, no past, present, and future, tolerance of heat, cold, and other dualities, knowing the minds of others, checking the influence of fire, sun, water, poison, and so on, and remaining unconquered by others. These constitute 5 perfections of the mystic process of yoga and meditation. I am simply listing these here according to their names and characteristics. Now please learn from me how specific mystic perfections arise from specific meditations, and also of the particular processes involved.
One who worships me in my atomic form, pervading all subtle elements, fixing mind on that alone, obtains the mystic perfection called anima. One who absorbs his mind in the particular form of the Mahatattva and thus meditates upon me as the supreme soul of total existence, achieves the mystic perfection called Mahima. By further absorbing the mind in the situation of each individual element, such as the sky, air, fire, and so on, one progressively acquires the greatness of each material element.
I exist within everything, and I am therefore in the essence of the atomic constituents of material elements. Attaching his mind to me in this form, the yogi may achieve perfection called Mahima, by which he realizes the subtle atomic substances of time. Fixing his mind in me with the element of false ego generated from the mode of goodness, the yogi attains the power of mystic acquisition, by which he becomes a proprietor of senses of all entities. He attains such perfection because his mind is absorbed in me.
One who concentrates all mental activities in me as the supersoul of that phase of the Mahatattva, which manifests the chain of fruitive activities, obtains from me, whose appearance is beyond material perception, the most excellent mystic perfection called Prakamya.
One who places his conscience on Vishnu, the super soul, the prime mover and supreme lord of the external energy consistent of 3 modes, obtaining the mystic perfection of controlling other conditional souls, their material bodies, and their bodily designation.
One who fixes your mind, the yogi who places his mind in my form of Vinayan, known as the 4th factor, full of all opulences, becomes endowed with my nature and thus obtains the mystic perfection called Vishita.
One who fixes his pure mind on me in my manifestation as the impersonal Brahman obtains the greatest happiness, wherein all his desires are completely fulfilled.
In human, that's all. Okay, so again, yesterday in the class, Krishna was explaining what you have to do when you start off on this path. And now he's giving a really comprehensive list of all the different mystic perfections that can be obtained, all the results that come. What we'll see in today's class, that what Krishna's actually doing by listing these things, he's hinting at the dangers of this path, the difficulty of this path. we'll see why as we go further into it. But basically, Krishna is always hinting at Bhakti Yoga, how Bhakti Yoga should be an ingredient. It's the same thing we see in the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives many different paths. There's 18 chapters. So I think it's Karma Yoga, that's the first 6 chapters. And then in the middle is Bhakti Yoga, the most precious thing, the real essence of the whole message of the Bhagavad Gita is in the middle 6 chapters. So similarly in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna is mentioning many different paths. He keeps hinting at the fact that Bhakti Yoga is actually like the all-encompassing, most essential of all paths. So we'll look at that today. So Krishna is hinting at the danger of this path of Astanga Yoga and mystic perfections. Okay.
Hare Krishna. So mystic perfections. They sound pretty cool, right? I mean, which one is your favorite? I'm just kidding. But yeah, as appealing as they might sound, the ability to touch the moon with your finger or become smaller than the smallest or greater than the greatest, there's a quality of these mystic opulences that makes them incompatible with the soul if used improperly, if used for materialistic things. So, like anything in the material world that's not connected with Krishna and not used in his service, they have temporary nature. And us, as jivas, as eternal parts and parcels of Krishna, we have an eternal nature. So when you try to mix the eternal nature of the jiva with the temporary nature of mystic opulences used for materialistic purposes, you will always continue to get dissatisfied. And like I said, they sound cool, and they might make you happy for some time, and they might allow you to have many followers as a great yogi. You could be very famous. You could have a lot of admiration for the opulences that you have. But eventually, like I said, if they're not being used in Krishna's service, they will wear off, and they will continue to entangle you more and more in the material world and lead to further and further dissatisfaction.
Okay, so Stephen mentioned at the end there that they can entangle you. How do these mystic opulences entangle us? Basically, they serve as a distraction. And if you look at the awesome commentary on this chapter, probably our most prolific Bhagavatam commentator in our line, Vishwanath Chakravarti, or one of the most prolific commentators, he points out that Krishna is actually describing these different things to point out that we should reject them. That's the sole purpose of Krishna mentioning them in this chapter. These mystic cities are generally obstacles, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is pointing out. So it's clear here that these meditations are made so that you can fix your mind on Krishna. In the yogic process, you focus on a particular form of Krishna, one of the Vishnu forms, who is the super soul. And that's actually the ultimate purpose. We learned, again, in yesterday's class, we learned, Prabhu explained so amazingly, that once the yogi can actually attain a level of samadhi, where he's getting like a full darshan of Krishna in that form, everything else is forgotten. And the only goal is then Krishna. But these mystic perfections that can be obtained along the path, they just serve as a distraction. So I'm going to explain to you something. You can read this in a very cool book. It's called Blazing Sadhus by one of Prabhupada's disciples. It's an autobiographical text. And in there, he explains another yogic path, but this one is more like in the tantric yogic area. So usually in India, those who worship Shiva and Mother Durga. So it's explained there that yogis in that line, it's very intense what they have to do. First, they have to also go through a period of austerity, take a vow of silence. They can't speak any word. They have a repenting process of sitting in different fires somewhere and all these things. So if they go through that process, then they start their meditation. And you are listening to Kundalini Yoga, right? So basically in this process, this is what yoga actually is. They start controlling their life airs through pranayama and different these sitting postures, then their energy gets gathered. This is the Kundalini process. Their energy gets gathered in the Muladhara. That was also mentioned in this class, for those of you who picked that up. So the energy gets gathered there, and we're playing in this cool book, for every chakra, every energy gate, at least in this practice, there's a goddess. Now, they didn't specify, but I'm assuming it's different forms of there's a goddess that presides over each chakra. And when you manage to gather your energy there, that goddess transports you to her realm. Then you have to perform worship with different mantras and pujas. You have to perform worship of that goddess. If you in any way mess up that worship, the goddess attacks you. Not like we think, but on a subtle level attacks you. So you can go completely mad. Many of these yogis go mad when they fail these steps. Okay, if you are to succeed and do the worship and the goddess is satisfied, then they offer you mystic perfections. If you accept, that's actually the end of the road. The energy doesn't go further up. If you deny the mystic perfections, then the goddess is pleased with you, she gives the blessings, and then the energy can go up further to the next chakra and the next chakra. The end goal is supposed to be liberation, where the energy goes all the way up to the crown chakra, and then the yogi can choose their time of death and basically shoot their own soul out of their skull and choose their next destination, liberate themselves. But basically, you see a yogi walking around with mystic perfections, it means they failed. One of those steps, one of those chakras, and one of those interactions, one of those goddesses, they accepted the boon, they accepted the gift of mystic perfections, but it's actually just a distraction. So similarly, in that tantric practice, it's very similar to what's here. Of course, this is more a sattvic form of this path, and you actually focus on Vishnu. You're not worshiping manifestations of the material energy in the form of Mother God. You're focusing on Krishna, Vishnu, but the same thing applies. Krishna is pointing out that these things are distractions. They're just similar. So that's the first thing that we notice. Why they're a problem? Why Krishna is hinting that it's a danger? There's something else that's very important. Okay, think about this carefully. These mystic perfections cannot fully satisfy the heart. Stephen Prabhu mentioned it's incompatible, right? The soul yearns for things that are eternal. The mystic perfection just gives a temporary satisfaction. It cannot actually satisfy the heart, which means it cannot fully uproot material desires. Why does Bhakti Yoga uproot material desires? Because you get higher desires, you get a higher taste. You don't desire material things anymore because you just want to be with Krishna, you just want to serve the devotees, have loving exchanges. When you have mystic perfections, there's none of that. The heart remains unsatisfied. And there's an example of this. There's a yogi that fell down. Who knows what I'm referring to? That's one. There's another one. There's someone. Yes, that's the one. So I don't know. Sorry?
The famous fall down.
Yeah, the famous fall down was like top 5. So fall down. So what happened with Saubhari Muni? So he was sitting. Part of his austerities was to sit at the bottom of the lake, I think. And, oh, he was in the Yamuna, sorry. He was sitting at the bottom of the Yamuna, doing his meditation. And what did he happen to see? Anyone knows? Anyone other than this?
I saw 2 fish mating.
He saw 2 fish mating, and it disturbed him so much that he gave up all his yogic practices and immediately went to go and get married. And kind of went into, let's say, a different field of life. Of course, after that, he lamented and he again went back to his yogic practices. So, straight from the Bhagavatam, let's look at his own words. In the 9th canto, he says, "Alas, while practicing austerity, even within the depths of the water, and while observing all the rules and regulations practiced by saintly persons, I lost the results of my long austerities simply by association with the sexual affairs of fish." And then he says, I found this quite interesting. He says, everyone should observe this fall down and learn from it. So that's quite nice. Usually when we mess up, we're quite ashamed and we try to hide it. But he's like, yeah, I messed up. But hey, we can learn from it. This was
Also, there was that backstory where he offended
yes.
Garuda.
And then in a previous life, I guess, or maybe earlier in his life, he had offended Garuda. So that's part of the reason why he had this weakness of heart. But in general, also, the point remains that, hey, when engaged in these yogic perfections or path of austerity and yogic perfections, it's a little precarious. It's not as safe as the path of Bhakti Yoga, because it doesn't fully satisfy the heart. Then Prabhupada says in the next verse, in the purport, Prabhupada says, Sabari Muni regrets that he had bad association even in the deepest part of the water. And because of bad association of the sexually engaged fish, he fell down. And then Prabhupada says, a secluded place is also not secure unless there is good association. So we've seen this point also many times throughout these chapters where Krishna is speaking with Uddhava. You know, as I said, Krishna is explaining so many different paths, but every now and then he hints at the fact, you know, Bhakti Yoga, that's really what you should be doing. Okay, so let's have a quick recap. Krishna is explaining these things, he's listing these things, because he's actually trying to point out the dangers of getting distracted by these mystic perfections. And Stephen Prabhu mentioned that it's incompatible because it's temporary. And we also mentioned now that it cannot satisfy the heart. So just a quick recap where we are.
So yeah, Krishna has designed the material world to be a perfect prison for us jivas who want to enjoy things for ourselves instead of serving him. So we have heavenly planets, mystic opulences, all of our senses and the objects of the senses. But I think many of us may have experienced, and you could just like raise your hand if you have, like maybe once you like entered into Krishna consciousness, or even recently, or at any point, you may have asked Krishna for a materialistic thing, like, oh Krishna, could I please just have like this one thing? Could I like do this one thing, one situation happen? And you know, it's bothering so long, and then once it happens, like I'll be satisfied and it'll be okay. But then you actually get the thing, or you are in the situation, and then you feel like, wow, this sucks. Like now that I have this, what do I do with this now? Like this is terrible. Has anyone ever experienced that?
So we'd actually like to hear from you if anyone wants to share a situation like that. Mike?
I think two things. First that came to mind was like a storage unit. I was getting ready to move into Krishna. It's harder to find anything. And he hooked me up with a really nice one, and then now I have to pay for it. And secondly, home him, and it was definitely challenging journey. And now he has like basically a pet paradise in the church's backyard who has like a deluxe kennel. And I'm very happy, but now I miss him. So.
We have some experience of what Stephen wants to describe.
If you want to like something food gifts, like usually just do yourself, like pray for it.
Don't involve Krishna.
Just give yourself.
Yeah, that's very sage advice.
And if you want something spiritual, then that's Krishna. So yeah, we can understand that material things will not really satisfy the self due to their lack of permanence and due to their lack of filling the Krishna-shaped hole in our hearts. You know, Krishna is like a key. He fits right in, and then he opens it up, and then Krishna brings but yeah, so there are many instances where devotees of the Lord, or personalities, will
wish for devotional service over material opulences or mystic powers when given the chance. Like for instance, very famous, we talk about this very often, the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Would anyone like to briefly just tell the story of Dhruva Maharaj?
So Dhruva was the second son of the second wife of King Tanavan. And but the first wife told him that if he wanted to sit on his father's lap on the throne, and eventually take the throne, he would have to die and be born in her womb. He got very upset. And anyway, in a nutshell, his mother tells him to seek the Lord, and that will satisfy him. He'll be able to find some satisfaction. So he seeks the Lord, and Narada, when he comes and tells him, practice pure bhakti. But he says, no, I want a kingdom. I want a kingdom greater than not only my father, but a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma, because my grandfather and my great grandfather. The Lord says, well, if you want that, then worship, or Narada says, worship the Lord for it. He spends his whole life worshiping the Lord to gain the kingdom. And at the end of his life, the Lord comes and says to him, he's going to take him home. Ask for me any boon. He says, Lord, I was seeking glass. All I really wanted deep down was your devotional service life after life. So he actually wound up gaining what he was seeking for. But in the final analysis, he didn't want it. Once he gained pure devotional service, that's all he wanted.
Sorry, thank you, Rasika Prabhu. And yeah, that metaphor that Dhruva Maharaj speaks to Krishna, I was praying for broken pieces of glass. This metaphor is very important because it illustrates not only like the lack of value that a kingdom greater than Lord Brahma's would be to a pure devotee. Yeah, it not only illustrates the lack of value, but how it's a distraction. How, broken pieces of glass, if you have those hanging around, you could cut yourself, you can scatter them and like cause a mess, like make a mess. It's not a very pleasant thing to keep around. I don't know, does anyone keep broken pieces of glass hanging around? So yeah, this metaphor is very important because it illustrates how these materialistic things and mystic opulences can impede devotional service. And so that's why Dhruva and many other devotees will do their best to not have them. Hare Krishna. Okay. So in the 6th canto, Vitrasura addresses the Lord and says, my dear Lord, by leaving your transcendental service, I may be promoted to the planet called Dhruva Loka, or I may gain lordship over the planetary systems of the universe, but I do not aspire to this. Nor do I wish the perfections of yoga practice, the mystic perfections of yoga practice, nor do I aspire to spiritual emancipation or liberation. All I wish for, my Lord, is your association and transcendental service eternally. So like we've been saying, devotional service will fully satisfy the self, and so that's why devotees like Dhruva, Vitrasura, Narada Muni, Kolavet Sridhar from Gaura Lila, Prahlad Maharaj, will, when given the opportunity by Krishna to take the offer like a boon, like mystic opulences or whatever, they will just ask for devotional service.
Okay, so we want to ask again from the audience if anyone's had a specific experience of this satisfaction that comes from devotional service. Anyone want to share anything about that, your experience, like some sort of satisfaction that you don't get anywhere else? No one's experienced it, so why are you here? I'd really like to give anyone access to.
So just really briefly, when I hear Srimad Bhagavatam and the association of other devotees, all my miseries that I thought I had disappear, and my heart becomes satisfied. Every time. It's never fails.
Examples of personal. So, whoever's asking us the question again, so the question is just share a personal experience that you've had with this deep satisfaction that Bhakti Yoga actually brings to the heart.
Thinking for me, one is, and I've experienced it multiple times with singing kirtan with kirtan leaders that are really singing sincerely, and they're really, you can just hear the begging in their voice, like they're really begging for Krishna, and they're meditating on the fact that Krishna is his name, and then it brings everything to life, and it feels like Krishna is that, like he's just dancing in the middle of the kirtan, and then it's like the material world just like dissolves around you. It's like you really get lost in Krishna's name. It's the most beautiful feeling. Yeah.
Audible, thanks guys. It almost happens daily or hour by hour, or if I'm feeling lethargic or I don't know, just out of sorts. If I engage with other devotees in doing really anything, I seem to gain momentum through the spirit of serving him. I know that that can happen in other places, but it's not as satisfying because it feels like we're aiming much higher and the virtue is much more pure. So when I engage in, it could be anything, washing a pot, sweeping, or just reading together, it seems to like snap me out of this like lazy fog, I guess.
Obliterates the mind. I also like to share, especially if I ever try and do some Sankirtan where I'm trying to share Krishna with others. There's a very deep sense of satisfaction that comes when I'm distributing books or taking part in Harinams, like we were in New York at the Razi Yatra. And Tulashya and I were speaking about it. We both had that experience. Because Tulashya also tries her best not to just join a Harinam to enjoy it, but she will look for people standing by, like innocent bystanders, and just kind of pull them in and try and involve them. So really having that spirit of getting everyone involved. And afterwards, Prabhupada has this phrase, he says, that you feel 10 feet tall, bulletproof. So yes, Bhakti Yoga really makes you feel invincible and blissful. Okay, so at this point, we're going to look at the purport. It's verse 11, right? It's verse 11. So we've been speaking about these mystic opulences, how Krishna says, don't be distracted by them. So what does the pure devotee do? Stephen Prabhu pointed out, they never choose the mystic opulences. But this purport will give us some more insight as well. So we can go to the
click on it.
Yeah, you can click on it. Anyone in particular would like to read the purport first? Okay, so it says, there are innumerable verses in Vedic literatures explaining that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is qualitatively not different from his creation, and thus a yogi may meditate upon the total material existence as a manifestation of the external potency of the Lord. Once the yogi has established his realization that the material creation is not different from the Lord, he obtains the perfection called Mahima Siddhi. By realizing the Lord's presence in each individual element, the yogi also acquires the greatness of each element. However, the pure devotee is not interested in such perfections because they are surrendered to the personality of Godhead, who exhibits such perfections to the infinite degree. Being always protected by the Lord, the pure devotees save their precious time to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus, they achieve for themselves and others Samsiddhi, or the supreme perfection, pure love of God. Krishna consciousness by which one expands one's existence beyond the total material creation to the spiritual planets like Kuntha.
So, just on that note of the supreme perfection, Radhanath Swami in a lecture on this chapter of the Bhagavatam says that the perfection of the mystic cities is actually to become detached from having any of them, because we as devotees experience something infinitely higher. We experience Krishna.
So this purport really brings it home. It says that the pure devotee, because of the chanting of the mantra, again, sharing it with others, they achieve some city, the supreme perfection. There's all these different mystic cities, but they really pale in comparison to what the pure devotee is giving to everyone. And what better example do we have than our dear Srila Prabhupada? So he was not interested in giving anyone anything other than just love of God. Teaching people, teaching everyone, whoever comes, whoever wants to learn, teaching them how to love Krishna. Who is Krishna? What is Krishna? And how do you approach him? How do you start? How do you then perfect that relationship? And go far beyond the material creation to the spiritual planets, Krishna Loka. So, Prabhupada didn't want to distract others. There's no way he's going to distract others by focusing on exhibiting mystic opportunities. Prabhupada was asked, what miracles can you perform? You know? In India, it's very popular that gurus try to perform miracles, and then people are very attracted and they garner followers in that way. But what did Prabhupada say when he was asked, can you perform a miracle, or what miracles have you performed? Does anyone know what he said?
This is my miracle.
Okay, so he turned
From
to
hippies to happy.
he turned to his disciples, he pointed at them and said, can you see this is the miracle? Just, souls in Kali Yuga just completely wandering around aimlessly. And now they're becoming interested in Krishna. So that's what the pure devotee does, right? That's the only thing they're interested in. And there's actually no doubt that Prabhupada did have mystic perfection. If you listen to the memories of Prabhupada, all the different disciples sharing different memories, that's where it really comes out. There's many different anecdotal moments where they share. I'll give you some examples because it's cool. We just recently read, actually, maybe a week or two ago, in the Lalita, was it in London, where they were going to install deities and have a whole ceremony with reporters and everyone coming. But the devotees didn't build the altar quite so sturdily. And there were very heavy pillars. When they were setting it up, it took like 2 or 3 young men to carry one pillar at a time and try and put it in place. So the ark is going on, it's the installation, and all of a sudden the whole thing starts buckling. And Prabhupada quickly told the one person to close the curtains, and the pillars fell, and he couldn't one of the pillars until others came to help him. So, like I said, they couldn't even move those pillars, 2 or 3 young men at a time. But the pure devotee, Prabhupada, caught them, one in each hand, like a marvelous superhero. Other examples, sometimes devotees would notice that if Prabhupada walked someplace like on grass, there wouldn't even be an imprint in the grass that was replaced. And there's one particular example of someone that saw a worm on the ground, and Prabhupada was about to step on the worm. And they were like, oh no. And then Prabhupada stepped on the worm, and the worm was like completely untouched. Interesting.
So like in the beaches?
At the beach,
At the beach?
he glide on the water.
Like there will be no print.
No
In the
imprint
sand.
in the wet sand. There's many anecdotal moments where they share these memories. The disciples share how Prabhupada could read their minds. Like there's one devotee that was extremely interested in astrology, to the point like he even was interested in how, depending on your nakshatra, which nakshatra your moon is in, you should have a name that starts with a certain syllable or consonant. And he never communicated these things to Prabhupada, but his initiated name that he got was exactly with the right syllable for him. And you'll hear of devotees saying that when Prabhupada looked at them, you knew that he was looking directly into your soul, and you could read your mind, you knew exactly what was going on. One of my favorite examples was, do you all know Mangalananda Prabhu, Michael Cassidy? He makes really, really cool music. He made like contemporary folk music in the 70s and 60s with devotional lyrics. What's his name? The artist's name? Michael Cassidy. Initiated names Mangalananda Prabhu, if I'm not mistaken. So he tells a story in one of these memories. He had just finished a new record, and he took the record to go and show it to Prabhupada. And who's there at the same time? John Lennon and Yoko Ono, also trying to show Prabhupada a recording of theirs. So they were going in first, and he was just observing, and it was a horrible record. John and Yoko Ono recording. And they were trying to play it to Prabhupada, and they just couldn't get the record player to work. Like, it was just really malfunctioning. And they were trying for a while, and they got frustrated eventually. And then they went out of the room, and Mangalananda Prabhu came in. He also wanted to show you the record, and the record player worked perfectly, and then Prabhupada shot him. So make of that what you want. Make of that what you want, but these, in my opinion, this is Prabhupada's displaying his mystic opulences. Malati and Chamasundra Prabhus once were put in prison, and they were supposed to be in prison for 5 years. And all of a sudden, one day the officer called them in, and he was like, sign here, and it was like the release form. And even the officer said, I don't know why this is here, I don't know why this order came in, but your release has been ordered. And then I got back to the temple, and Prabhupada just said, oh, nice to see you. I was thinking just this morning, 5 years is too long.
I was just thinking of one where there was supposed to be a big feast and nobody made it. And the Prabhupada, he kicks all the devotees out of the kitchen and closes the door from scratch. And in 20 minutes, he prepares this elaborate, all the bells and whistles, rice, salt, chutney, and the whole thing. And anyway, they were amazed that he was able to do that in 20 minutes. Kicked everybody out, closed the door.
So, yeah, so I just thought it would be interesting to share with you the fact that Prabhupada displays some interesting abilities sometimes, but clearly it's not what he was doing all the time. That wasn't the main thrust of what he was sharing. He wasn't like performing miracles to attract devotees. Devotees would just notice these little miracles as they were going on through the day alongside Prabhupada. But the pure devotee he doesn't want anyone to focus on his imperfections. He doesn't want to focus on it himself. He doesn't want to distract anyone by it. So, because bhakti is superior, and if you have a jewel, you want to share it with someone, you want them to focus just on the jewel. So that's our main message of today's class: the superiority of bhakti and the dangers of the mystic path. Thank you so much for listening.
I wanted to add to that story from the politician. So this Bengali politician was there. I don't know if it was the same person or maybe different, what he said. He went to Prabhupada and talked about this person who would just manifest like an apple or something out of thin air. And he said, oh, Prabhupada, did you hear about this, yogi, this manifested as apple out of thin air. And Prabhupada said, I went to the West with 40 rupees and I had nothing. And now there are so many temples. And in each temple, there's so many devotees. And they're all Western and they all are serving for no pay. And then in each of those temples, whenever I go, they have so many apples for me. So he said, who is the bigger mistake? So the politician said, it's Prabhupada.
Yeah, I was thinking that these the different systems for in the Vedas, there's the mystic yoga system, and there's karma yoga system, and there's bhakti. So we know that bhakti is the highest, but when you look at the process that people have to follow, the other ones are so much more strenuous, you know, and bhakti is so apparently easy. And so, but Srila Prabhupada said that bhakti is simple, but he never said it was easy. Although it looks easy, it's deceptively easy. But yeah, so the reason that people are attracted to these other processes and that bhakti is more rare, because pure devotion is the most rare thing, although it looks simple, is because like the mystic yoga system, it attracts people because of the controlling propensity. So it's all about controlling the mind, controlling the senses, and then what you get, the rewards you get are just more control, you know, controlling other people's minds, controlling elements, you know, like that, controlling their body, what it can do. So it appeals to people, and it kind of like, but by engaging that controlling propensity and rewarding the controlling propensity with more control opportunities, it just entangles you in the material world. And the same thing with like with karma, is like, you know, it's about the enjoying propensity, that I want to enjoy material things. And so there's all these rituals they can do, and then they get material things. And so it's meant for gradual detachment, but it's faulty, you know, it's so much faulty because it's working. It's kind of like playing with fire, you know, you can easily get burned. And bhakti is like totally transcendental, but the reason that bhakti is difficult is because the whole reason that we're in this material world is because of our controlling and enjoying propensities. And in order to do bhakti, you have to give those up. And just pass the control over to Krishna, which is anyways what's happening. And see that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and I'm just the humble servant here. And my position is simply to serve for Krishna's pleasure. And let Krishna do whatever he wants with me. And so that's hard because, you know, we have to really be purified of these lower, actually demonic propensities in order to do it properly. So bhakti is like a long haul, but the good thing about bhakti is that the process is so powerful because Krishna helps. With these other processes, it's like you're on your own, but Krishna helps, and he's happy to remove these controlling, enjoying propensities if we so desire.
Thank you so much. And the controlling propensity, I would like to think that it comes from fear, really, doesn't it? Because this world is very overwhelming. And then out of fear, we think if we can just control everything, protect ourselves. But Prabhu was mentioning in yesterday's class as well, you have to trust Krishna. You were saying that this path is simple, but it's also sometimes called simple for the simple. So like you were basically saying, you have to be simple. It's almost like becoming like a child, because in the Bible it also says, I don't remember, I haven't read the Bible in a long time, but so unless you become like children, have faith like children, not entering the kingdom of God. So children are very simple and they trust. In that sense, we should become really simple, and once we become simple, then we can adopt this simple and easy natural process of bhakti. Advaita Prabhu had his hand up. I don't know how much time it's left.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you very much for the class. I was thinking for those who are more into the Marvel universe. And superheroes and superpowers. Ironically, those who do attain the pure bhakti, all these things are actually at their disposal. So, you know, you have this route that is insecure, and if you're really into it, better to take the secure route, and you get all three for the price of one. Mukti, and city.
It's like the snake too, where he just goes into the home and like just enjoys.
One of the gurus, yeah.
Eats the mouse.
Similar to what you was saying, Prabhupada says several places that when performed bhakti yoga, do not bereft of any results of any of these processes. It's describing the purports and like cancer somewhere in different ways you think mystic cities, yoga, herbs, austerities. Vaishnavas usually use mantras, but they're material sciences. They're not spiritual at all. They're just real subtle material sciences, and they can easily be distracted. If you're distracted by the byproducts of yoga, then you don't get the ultimate goal.
I just wanted to mention that just like these mystic cities are distractions for yogis, they're also distractions that arise on the practice of bhakti, profit, adoration, and distinction.
Vishwanath Chakravarti writes about them.
So we also have to be careful of things that arise in the course of bhakti. That, when someone becomes a great devotee, then people want to do things. They want to serve them. They want to give them donations. They honor them, and so the devotee can start thinking that they can become attached to those bonuses that come, and they can actually be sidetracked. Instead of doing it to please Krishna, they're doing it to please the audience so they can get donations, or they're doing it for recognition, or they start, like, people are worshiping them and they start feeling like, yes, I'm better than others, I'm worshipable, and that pride proceeds to fall. So watch out for those.
So if you're not at peace, always see yourself and slow and slow in the street. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Hare Govinde Namah Ramani Vaishnave Samapaya Namrata Vishwasvanagajai. Fortunate presence of faith, Mahamprasad, spiritual presence of the Lord. Sri Krishna and the Vaishnavas. Vadvat Mahaprasade Govindi. I said something else. Hey, Nick. Okay, and the Zoom meeting first or the YouTube?